Well, let's bring in economist Franklin Nemeka Ugwu. He's a former senior policy and research consultant at the African Development Bank Group. Good to see you and thanks for your time. Looking at the figures from the NBS, Nigeria's inflation rate surged to 32.7 in September. What are the factors responsible for this surge?
Thank you for having me. A couple of factors, but all of them are related to the issue of fuel subsidy and foreign exchange. But outside these two factors, of course, normal inflation is rise in the price of goods and services. And of course, the basket of goods and services like garri, yam, all of them come into it. But in addition to that, you also know that we have insecurity in Nigeria. We also have growing population. We also have food export from Nigeria to other African countries. So all these factors are contributing to inflation. But overall, the key two factors causing this volatility, this increasing inflation, can be attributed to the removal of fuel subsidy and then the foreign exchange. So you floated the Naira. So you find out that everything is tied to the Naira. So once Naira goes up, the person selling yam will tell you the thing has gone up. The person transporting the yam will tell you dollar has gone up. The person, everything. So it's a kind of cyclic situation. And of course, the Naira itself is pegged to the dollar. So everything is so once you've removed fuel subsidy, so it means that even if you are getting from Dangote or you're importing, everything is coming pegged with the dollar. So that's the two main, so removing the fuel subsidy and floating the Naira can be said to be a wrong policy choice of the government. I mean, that's at the center of the crisis that we're having at the moment.
Now, it looks like, you hit the nail on the head, and you're echoing what other, so many other economic experts like yourself, have said. But this government continues to defend its economic policies. Well, there's apparently a huge gap between what government is saying and the reality on the ground. You heard the Cardoso there, the CBN governor, says, look, we'll adjust policies as needed. Is that what we should be seeing now, these adjustments? And what kind of adjustments really should we be seeing? Based on the two, key points that you've pointed, yeah.
I think, do we need reforms in Nigeria? Yes, we need reforms. The question is the sequencing of the reforms.
Right.
So we've argued before. We say that fuel subsidy should be removed. But removing the fuel subsidy, at the same time floating the Naira, at the same time cannot be said to be the right sequencing of the policies. Because as I said, remember that fuel is sold based on dollar. Remember that everything that we do in Nigeria is also tied to dollar. So if supposing, let's say when the new government came in May 2023, dollar was official exchange rate was 4 and something Naira. At the parallel market, it was about 7 and something Naira, or even let's say 800. So if we used a managed floating, and also let's even leave dollar at 800. I'm just using it as an example. It means that fuel price, even if you remove fuel subsidy, fuel will now be maybe at 600 or about 500, as the case may be. But now you leave Naira to be floating. It means that once Naira goes up to 1,005, 1,006, 1,007, it will reflect automatically to the fuel, to everything that we do in Nigeria, and inflation will be going up. So do we need, we've been here for 18 months now.
Right.
Maybe World Bank is saying that we have to stay on this course for a longer time. But we also remember that policies are for Nigerians, not Nigerians for the policies.
Right.
Because you also have to be alive. We have to be a bit, understand, most of the time economics or economists, we look at factors without really considering the other socio-economic impacts and the interconnectedness of economics to sociology to environment and all, and how all these things affect economic outcomes. So I think that the policies, reforms are important, but the sequencing and the coordination of the policies needs to be re-examined.
But now that we've tested both, sorry, darling. Now that we've done subsidy removal.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, full subsidy removal, totally. At least that's what government has told us. And the floating of the Naira. and we've had this many months to test the impact.
Yeah.
Should the CBN now courageously take that step in the direction of the Naira, the floating of the Naira, to reverse that policy?
I think it might be too, hasty to say that they have to continue or not to continue.
Okay.
I think there's something that is called regulatory impact assessment to say, okay, this policy that we've implemented, we've done it for 18 months. What are the impacts? Where are we going? Yeah. So, for instance, you ask CB and they say we are doing inflation targeting. But the question is, what target are we looking at? Are we looking at inflation at being 20%? Are we looking at inflation at 40%? Are we looking at 50%? Or is it 10%? As the case may be. In central banking, there is also what is called forward guidance. So you guide the economy to say, this is where we are, this is where we are not, this is where we're supposed to go. And that should enable the private sector to also come in and collaborate with the federal government. So looking at where we are at the moment, so if we floated the Naira, I mean, if we float the Naira, sorry, before we float the Naira, we're supposed to have assessed and examined our productive capacity and also our supply capacity with regards to making sure that we have foreign exchange to supply to maintain the floating as the case. But I'm not sure we did it properly. So now that we've done it, I think what we are expecting the government to do is actually to focus seriously in terms of productivity, in terms of increasing the productivity of the economy, in terms of enabling export. Anything that we can export, we have to support it now so that we can earn more foreign exchange. And if we test it, we might now say, okay, what can we do in terms of if we increase the supply of dollar that we have, in terms of the dollar we've received, it means that if the thing continues to go up, we have the supply capacity to also intervene in the market, which the CBN does from time to time, as the case may be.
Okay, now that we're going, let's see if I can attempt a double here now. Going by the report from Sonny Maduago, what were the key, themes you got from the Abuja residents who spoke about the cost of living? And if you can actually wrap up by letting us on the outlook for the future, going by what the NBS has just released.
If you look at what the NBS released, the food inflation is still very, very significant in terms of increasing the inflation, which is normal, like yam, plantain, garri, and all that. So in terms of the outlook, what do we do? As I said, the fundamental thing is for the government to see how they can enable farmers to go back to farm. Insecurity. How do they tackle insecurity? So we are now even at the peak of harvest season. And the inflation is still going up. It shows that the policies are not working the way we expect the policies to work. So it's time to go back to drawing board. And that's why I said that you have to do regulatory impact assessment to say, are these policies working? If they are not working, how do we rejig it? How do we rethink it? Because at the end of the day, we are moving towards a situation where it might not be very manageable. So the government needs to re-examine this and engage the private sector and say, what can we do differently with that policies? Left for me, I will say that floating of the Naira, as I said before, was not the right policy. You can manage fuel subsidy removal, but floating the Naira and removing the subsidy at the same time, wrong choices.
A total no-no.
Yes.
And this government hopes to, at least we heard from the CBN governor there, we're hoping to achieve a $1 trillion economy by 2030. Hope that's a realistic dream enough, but we'll have to leave it there. Dr. Franklin Nemeka Ugwu is the ex-senior policy and research at the African Development Bank, associate professor, strategy and risk management, Lagos Business School at the Pan Atlantic University. Thank you so much for joining us on News.
Thank you.